He is the senior technology leader with over 26 plus years of experience of IT experience with specialization in quality engineering, testing, agile and DevOps, knowledgeable in agile software development models, continuous integration and delivery models. Evangelist to accelerate transition and adoption of agile practices and testing organizations. His experience in delivering complex engineering testing projects in cross-geographical context across wide range business domains such as banking, insurance, retail, cards, payments, actions, and others. So the topic for the second session is unlocking the future of DevTestOps with AI, fostering collaboration and breaking silos.
Yeah, so imagine if your code could collaborate with you, anticipate your needs, and weave a tapestry of innovation. Well, today we are here to unveil the magic that makes this a reality. Ladies and gentlemen, visionaries of technology and enthusiasts of the future, welcome to a session where I'm sure this promises to transform your perspective and ignite your curiosity. So, in this vibrant ambience of the Step Summit 2023, where knowledge converges with aspirations, I am Siddhant Wadhwani, and I'm honored to be your guide through the uncharted territories of unlocking the future of DevTestOps with AI, fostering collaboration and breaking silos. So, you heard about a quick introduction about me, but I'd like to obviously speak a little more about myself. So, yeah, it's not working. Okay. Yeah, so this is me. I have about 8+ years, not 26 years of experience. I have 8+ years of professional work experience. I manage a team of SDETs, currently working as an SDET manager at Newfold Digital. And I've been a keynote speaker at various tech conferences, also taken up the mantle of being a browser stack champion and the Mumbai chapter lead. Have done various certifications and also pretty much immersed in the technology field. But apart from that, if you want to know me, I am an avid traveler, a passionate foodie, as you can see me, of course, but a tech advocate as well. And yeah, I blog, I write articles for a lot of companies, been a WordCamp speaker, mostly in the WordPress side, done a lot of podcasts and vodcasts as well, and open source contributor to WordPress. Very recently, I was also awarded the top programming voice on LinkedIn. And yeah, you can always connect with me on through various social medias. I have a following of 12K followers on LinkedIn, so pretty active over there. And I hope this works.
Does it hard?
Yeah, so in the field of testing, you encounter bugs randomly, right? So this happens. Yeah, awesome. Thank you. So yeah, apart from that, apart from the social media, if you want to connect with me, I have my portfolio website, which is siddhantwadhwani.com, or you can always just search my full name on Google, and you'll find a lot of links to connect as well. So yeah, taking your time into the agenda for today, I don't want to waste more time into who I am and what I am. We can always connect offline, but there's a lot to cover today. So let's see what's there for today's agenda. I'm sure most of you attended the previous talk that was on DevSecOps, right? Raise of hands, how many of you all were present already? Yeah. So before moving on to DevSecOps, I'm sure you've heard this term. If not, then I think it's the right forum. So DevTestOps is what we'll be covering as the very first topic, the modern path to agility. And this basically will circulate around how DevTestOps is rewriting the rules for software development and testing. Next, we'll move on to the heart of software delivery and development, which is continuous integration and continuous delivery. Third, we'll look into certain best practices and real-world examples, how DevTestOps has been implemented within those companies and what are the best practices that have come out from there, and how it can make DevTestOps as a revolution in the field of efficiency, transformation, collaboration, and that sort. Then we'll bust certain myths that have been there for quite some time related to DevTestOps and also unravel certain misconceptions. Post that, we have a very interesting topic. I'm sure most of you are aware, and I'm sure very much keen to know about what is happening in the field of ChatGPTs and Bard and AI. And lastly, what's next with DevOps. So yeah, this is the agenda, and moving on. So let's begin with a quote. I'm not sure if with the lighting you all are able to see it, but let me read that out. This is: quality is not an act, but it is a habit. This is said by Aristotle. Can any one of you explain what this means? Anyone? I think it's pretty self-explanatory, right? Quality is not an act, it is a habit, right? It's not a one-time activity. It needs to be done across all the phases of your software development lifecycle. And that's what we have been taught in this journey of software testing. So I just wanted to reiterate this fact. Don't think of it as a one-time activity. Practice it throughout, and that's what DevTestOps basically circulates around. So in the field of software development, the process we know basically starts with an idea. It moves on to becoming or transforming into a concept, and finally into a functional product. But at times there have been most of you all forget about testing the idea in itself. You'll end up testing the product or the functionalities around it. But what about the idea? Do you think of that? I think you all divert into different directions. So my main motive here is to highlight that test the idea, move on to the next set of boundaries step by step. So you can see we have testing, amigos, collaboration, BDD, moving on to different artifacts. The next step is you create mind maps, requirements, user stories, identify that particular segment, and finally move on to the product. That's where you would have already covered your functional testing, move on to non-functional areas. And yeah, there's unit testing, integration testing, various levels of testing. So don't just think that functional testing is done, you have covered UI and API, and that's your limit, right? So that's what I wanted to cover with this one. So talking about what is the importance of testing in DevOps. I'm sure with security you would have understood where security fits in, but where exactly does testing fit in? Can anyone answer? Anyone in the crowd? At which phase? Plan? Year? Where? After build, okay. Any other all? Yeah, the right answer is all. So that's what I'm trying to reiterate. It should be there throughout your life cycle. This is your life cycle. You're basically starting right from the requirements gathering phase where you're planning things. You start with your designing, your coding, your testing. Testing, yes, there's a specific activity, but that's what we keep reiterating, that there's shift left testing and there's shift right testing. So start at your planning phase, move across, follow the entire DevOps cycle, and keep testing. And does that mean tests everywhere? Yes, but that's where DevTestOps comes in. So this concept I want you all to make very clear. DevOps, I'm sure most of you all are aware. What is test automation, you all are aware. What is agile testing, you all are aware. But this entire thing, when it's brought together, that's what forms DevTestOps. Okay. So with DevTestOps, I'm sure with the name itself, you are able to familiarize yourself that it's basically the development teams, your quality assurance teams, that is your testing teams, and your operation engineers teams. So when they all come together, that's when DevTestOps basically gets formed. And if you all remember the tagline that I basically showed on the first slide, can anyone remember what was the agenda behind this talk? Fostering collaboration and breaking silos, right? So when these three teams come together, they discuss, they form strategies, that's when you are able to foster collaboration. So the main point of DevTestOps is this, that don't work in your siloed departments. Focus on agile testing, focus on test automation, be a part of the entire DevOps cycle, and contribute to testing throughout. So how does it work? I think I've just collated this into 5 very simple points. First is implementing bug-free policies. Ensures bugs that are raised on production must be validated and closed in minimal possible duration, right? Second, build a successful CD pipeline, reduce the cost, time, and risk of delivering software changes, enable incremental updates. Third, include more quality control steps. I'm sure you all would have experimented with Vera code and various other quality gates, Sonar Cube and stuff like that. So implement those. Use test-first approaches like test-driven development, acceptance test-driven development, BDD, etc. To run your automation scripts throughout for testing new features as well as existing flows. And lastly, store and reuse the suite of automation scripts for future. That is basically used to reassure to your stakeholders that your testing is thorough and adequate. So it's basically following your simple principles of software testing. And yeah, moving on. So DevTestOps basically has its own set of manifesto which was coined in 2018. Just like Agile manifesto. I'm not sure how many of you all are familiar with Agile testing, but it comes from that Agile methodologies. That's where DevTestOps was coined and formed, and it focuses on just these 5 key metrics. The first one being continuous testing over testing at the end. And again, these very 5 basic points are simple to understand. You need to perform testing throughout the life cycle rather than just testing as a single activity at the end. Next, embracing all testing activities rather than focusing on only automation. Third, testing what gives value rather than testing everything. And I'll circle around this when I'm talking. I have a slide on automation specifically. That's when I'll tell you why this adds value. Next, testing across the team over testing in siloed testing departments. So over this entire journey anyways, I'll be covering why and how DevTestOps is going to foster collaboration. And lastly, focusing on product coverage rather than your code coverage. Okay, 5 simple manifestos. Next, automation may be a good thing, but remember that it all started with Frankenstein. How many of you all have seen the movie Frankenstein? Right? So you'll know what happened towards the end. Right? I don't want to dive into that. If folks haven't seen that, we can always discuss that later. But my main takeaway from this quote is, just because you can automate doesn't imply that you should be automating it. In fact, automating the wrong things can have always a ripple effect of damage. So you all must have heard that 100% automation is possible, is not possible, may not be feasible. I would suggest focus on the right things and get those automated. And if you have time, obviously, go ahead, automate. No one is stopping you, right? So certain automation strategies for DevOps, the main focus should be continuous integration, continuous deployment. You have infrastructure as a code, continuous monitoring, continuous testing, and here are certain tools that I have listed out. So for CI/CD, I'm sure most of you all can use Jenkins, this Travis CI, Bamboo, Circle CI, and various others. You have for your containerizations, you have Docker, Kubernetes, and other tools available. For infrastructure as a code, you have Chef, Puppet, Ansible, Terraform, continuous testing, and then you have also on the monitoring side, you have Datadog, New Relic, as well as on the logging and stuff, you have your ELK stack, right? So these are some of them. Also, not to miss out, Prometheus and Grafana. So those are also there. How many of you believe in this motto over here? Raise of hands, whoever. Just a few? For the others, it's like only your responsibility, is it? Testing is everyone's responsibility, whether it be your developer, your product manager, every single stakeholder who is involved in releasing that particular feature or product to production. Each and everyone is responsible for testing. Now, I'm not reiterating this entire thing. I'm sure most of you all are aware of this particular concept, whether it's called the test pyramid or the test triangle. This was basically coined by Martin Fowler and Mike Kohn. You can always check out the Martin Fowler's website where a lot of details are mentioned about the test automation pyramid. But just a small brief. Yes, you should increase the number of automation tests at the bottom of your pyramid, which is maximum of unit test, maximum of API test, and then lesser number of UI tests. They can be manually driven, but the more number of tests you have at this cycle, it's basically lower cost and more faster execution. right? Adopting an agile testing manifesto. How is this important in the DevTestOps lifecycle? So, like we saw the DevTestOps manifesto, the agile manifesto has its own set of rules, which is testing throughout rather than testing at the end, which we already discussed. But the second one is preventing bugs rather than finding bugs. So think of ways that you can prevent bugs rather than find. Okay, you must have testing understanding rather than focusing on checking the functionality. Build rather than break, and focus as a team rather than just focusing alone. Being a sole tester, form groups, discuss with your developers, reach out to your product managers, and that's how basically you can scale up in the field of agile testing. Again, I'm sure most of you are familiar with this concept as well, test center of excellence. It is important to set up a test center of excellence, and I'll just go over quickly these 5 basic segments. But there are certain statistics that show that those companies that have set up a test center of excellence, there's been benefits of 50 to 70% in automation. There's been a reduction of 2% in defect leakage, and overall 30% reduction in your test cycles. So this is something that needs to be adopted. If it's not being adopted, reach out to your test managers and discuss on that front. The first one being analyze. There could be various challenges that are going on in your organization. There could be multiple teams working. So it's better to analyze, discuss all the processes, come together, do a SWOT analysis, have small wins, and based on that, whatever feedback you're getting, whatever discussions take place, move on to the next phase, which is standardize. That's where you collate all your processes, identify which is the best suitable for certain use cases. Finally, moving on to synergizing, where you're forming the org structure, defining specific roles, and using your capacities accordingly. Then you move on to expansion, where you're focusing on more continuous improvement and rolling out to new business users and use cases. Lastly is tracking. I'm sure with every release you would be tracking your metrics, having dashboards set up, following COCOMOs, seeing what is the return on investment. I'm sure that question rolls down from top down. So these are things that will be discussed during your test center of excellence. Again, certain tools that can help you follow DevTestOps. I'm sure some of you all would be using a few, but it's good to always explore the others. There's Tricentis, Tosca, Selenium 4 is out, Test Sigma, Robot Framework, Eggplant, Git, Catalan Studio, Jira, Appium, Datadog, Jenkins. These are some of them. Okay. What about accelerators? So, like we discussed, functional testing is one aspect. What about the other areas? There's service virtualization. How many of you are familiar even with this term? A few of you, right? So what exactly is service virtualization, if I may ask? Anyone? It's basically using stubs, using mocks, mocking certain data on your test environments. And there are various tools that can help you with that. There's WireMock, there's Hoverfly, and various others. So you can always explore that segment. Second topic is, sorry? WireMock, Hoverfly, and there are various others I can always showcase, yeah. And then integrated test environments to build in quality. So obviously you cannot test things in production, otherwise, boom, right? So have proper integrated test environments. That's why service virtualization also helps, where you're not able to have test end-to-end data. You can mock certain use cases and test that. Then you have continuous transaction monitoring dashboard set up, dashboards, or maybe use tools like Datadog, New Relic that can help you with your infrastructure monitoring, or your application performance monitoring, or your user monitoring, and various other aspects, and also provide you real-time alerts on a regular basis. Next, self-serve test data portal. All of us know how important test data is. So make use of test data portals. Shift right. Most of you know about shift left testing, right? What about shift right? Has anyone thought of that? I know everyone doesn't have time here, right? it's our time is limited. We get specific deadlines that we need to release during this particular period, but you need to plan things accordingly. And shift right plays an equally important role. When things go to production, they need to be maintained as well as monitored. So shift right testing is that concept. And then you have consumer driven contract testing. That's where you have your partner and your consumer, you share your contracts, and then at an individual level you test that out. And lastly, you have test automation at scale. So how do you scale your automation test? I'd like anyone to just answer. Sorry? Reusability of code. Okay. I would reframe that as maybe have modular code, parameterize and make use of it. Anyone else? Sorry? Parallel testing, yes. Continuous testing, exactly. So yeah, again, there are various ways that you can scale it. Parallel have distributed, I forgot, sorry. Yeah, have modular code and scale in that fashion. Yeah, so moving on to the next topic, that is the role of continuous integration and continuous delivery in DevTestOps. The very first thing is automate the test cycle in itself by getting all possible critical tests automated. I'm sure that's the very first goal when you think of automation, have all your high revenue generating or critical tests automated. Second is work with the development team to set up automated unit tests. So you have your proper unit tests in place, you add quality gates, and you have different test environments where you can test out your code and make it live. Next, set up automated builds and deploy processes. So you have your entire CI/CD process automated. Define and automate the handoffs between your development and test teams. So the closer you'll work together, you'll maybe can have a bug bash just before doing a release. So that's where you can foster collaboration. Everyone is on the same page and you make things live. And it all depends on you, because no one is going to take that initiative, although I did say testing is everyone's responsibility, but first thing, it's your responsibility, right? So create test environment profiles in preparation for automated environment provisioning, which is basically infrastructure as a code and all, which we'll see later. Leverage cloud or use virtual clusters to set up test environments on demand. Integrate testing capability with the development team's continuous integration capability and focus on continuous testing. So this is one simple use case. I'm sure something similar is what you all would also be using in your companies. You have a team of developers. They write their code, obviously, push it onto their local branches. But before that, may or may not have unit tests. So they may use Mockito or JUnit 5 or Jest, depending on your use cases. Push those from their feature branches onto a development branch, onto a master branch. Make use of Bitbucket or Stash for your repository management. Then you have continuous integration, where you have make use of tools like Jenkins or Travis CI and stuff. This is one example where we use Jenkins with OpenShift. And you have unit testing and quality gates also, where there's Jacoco, your Sonar Cube and stuff. And you also do a round of shift left testing. So here you can see testing is involved right itself from the first phase. Basically on your local host itself, testers are involved. And if you can get your developers on board adding unit tests, that always helps. Then depending on how the build passes, you can always proceed. If you're using cloud services like maybe AWS, you can proceed to that, otherwise fail the complete build there itself. Moving on to that, you have different AWS services. Like for this example, we are using S3 buckets, code build, CloudFormation, and the different testing environments. So you have a development, you have a QA or a staging environment, a mirror production, or you say a canary environment, or a mirror prod, and your final production environment. So that's where you do your releases. And during this entire cycle, you obviously have certain behind the scene activities that are running, where you clone the repo, you create a Docker image, you push to Amazon ECR, and then you create a latest image of that and push it to prod. You have health checks running. But during this entire cycle, you also focus on these aspects. You have different tools that you'll be running on the functional side, on the non-functional side. So these are some of them that I've listed out. Yeah, for DevTestOps, this is not a new concept, but it's been there for quite some time. Not a lot of you all are familiar with this. I know that. And there were myths and misconceptions about it. At the same time, everything has its pros and cons. So the pros are no or minimum manpower is required because most of these things are automated. You have your development and testing done through automation. You have CI/CD automation, which allows a lot of time gets saved with that. Testing and deployment become a one-step process because your entire CI/CD flows are automated. Minimum deployment errors and quick error debugging. Again, these are self-explanatory. But coming to the cons, again, cons are not that great because if you see, outsourced infrastructure needs access to special development expertise. And that's where you all can step in as earlier Rahul and Vipul, if you all attended their sessions in the morning, you all would have heard that ChatGPT and AI are advancing, they'll get smarter by the day, right? And the second thing is that there are different roles from QA to QE to SDET. People are transitioning, right? So if you get involved in that DevOps cycle, that will obviously help leverage DevTestOps in a better fashion. Compatibility issues may appear while imitating the production environment. I think that's of course known. Security is one of the most important concerns of DevTestOps. That's where DevSecOps comes in, which you heard about earlier. So no one is stopping you to have security implemented, but the very first step would be having a focus on testing across all the phases of your life cycle. So certain best practices based on whatever real world examples we'll see coming forward. In terms of testing, automate as much of the testing process as possible. Write test cases that cover all aspects of your software. Incorporate testing early in the software development process. In terms of security, write secure code, test for vulnerabilities. You can make use of OWASP Zap or Burp Suite. These are some of the great tools in terms of security. Manage infrastructure securely. And lastly, respond quickly to security incidents. That's what we were discussing earlier. Last topic, automation. Automate as much of the software delivery process. 100% is not feasible, as we saw. Use tools that are easy to use and integrate with, monitor and analyze performance on the shift right side of testing. Certain real world examples. Now, how many of you have heard of Netflix? That's it? Okay. Yeah. So Netflix earlier focused on the model of operate what you build. They had siloed departments. Each and every person within that department, each and every function was having a specific task. Like an architect would focus only on design, developer would develop, SDET would test, operation engineers would focus on the operations part, and so on. They later shifted to this model that is operate what you build, and that's where your developer is now. When I call developer, I'm basically calling all kind of test professionals, engineers. They got involved in the entire tooling process and each and every cycle of your software development lifecycle. So whether it be design, develop, testing, deploy, operations, or support, that's where you need to be involved. Not focus on siloed departments, but communicate with your stakeholders. Be a part of the entire process, right from your requirements gathering to design discussions and towards your final testing and deployments. Yeah, moving on to Spotify. How many of you use Spotify? A lot of you all, right? 450 million users, right? Back in 2018, Spotify came up with this case study from DevTestOps to DevTestOps. They also faced a lot of issues and then moved on to implementing DevTestOps in real time. And how did they do? How did they basically focus on this? They had automation in place. They focused on infrastructure as a code. All of their team members were focusing on development, testing, and operations activities. Continuous testing was a part of the entire life cycle, and that's what exactly DevTestOps quotes, right? These are some of the statistics around DevOps and DevTestOps, which you can see from this current year till 2027, and you can see the market size outlook in $1 million. I'm sorry, that's getting cut, but it's about 2873.70. And then you have the compound annual growth rate, which you can see over here. That's 24.5%, and it's increasing over time. You have your market size growth, which is, this is global. And market size growth, it's again in $1 million. So time over time, this has continuously kept increasing. And yeah, certain myths around DevTestOps, let's look into that. First thing was 100% automation. We discussed it's not feasible. And that's why that's always a myth, because rather than focusing on automating everything, I would say focus on the critical aspects. Second is challenge with coordination. I gave you all basically the tips. Communicate with your stakeholders, and that's what will help DevTestOps succeed even further. Last thing is a cost-benefit analysis. Now, with automation in place, with fixing defects early in the life cycle when you have shift-left testing, cost-benefit analysis is always going to benefit you in terms of DevTestOps. Very first time, it will be expensive because you need to invest time for this initially, but once it's set, it becomes a process. So these are some of the myths that we have seen, and a lot of companies have started implementing this. So that's all about DevTestOps. Now let's look at how AI can revolutionize testing. I have just few minutes, so I'll rush a bit, but I don't want to miss out on certain key aspects. So most of you all have heard about GPT-4 and OpenAI, and similarly Google Bard, right? The evolution of software testing, it's been right from 1948, and now it's the current era, that's AI. We have ChatGPT now and Bard. A lot of us are discussing how we can use it for automated testing. There are multiple use cases which I will touch upon given the limited time, but we can always discuss outside. The very first thing that we can use is testing as a service. So you can always have this, your entire setup in the cloud, have certain independent teams that can perform all these functionalities of testing, whether it's black box, white box, load and performance testing, configuration management, test framework and design, and functional automation. All that can be leveraged through AI. For testing in the cloud, it basically needs you to have all your infrastructure in the cloud rather than on-prem. You can basically, when you're testing in the cloud, it's more flexible, scalable, and cost-effective. With ChatGPT, Bard, and AI, it will obviously enhance your cloud-based testing, improve the accuracy and efficiency, enable testers to create test cases using natural languages, reducing errors. Data can be generated to predict defects, which I'll show. I have 3 quick recordings. Hopefully, I'll get time for showing that. Predictive measures can be taken to address defects before they impact the software. Just before I move on to the recordings, continuous testing, which is very important, and how AI can help. The 2 important things are shift left and shift right. And this I've made very clear. I'm sure most of you all have understood that. The first thing is automated test case generation. Again, I know some of you all have already tried ChatGPT or Bard. Here I've asked write an automation script that can help me fetch all the broken links from my portfolio website with a depth of 2, and added certain details that add all types of positive, negative edge cases, cover all of that. And the more better prompt you pass, that much accurate results you'll get. So this is the key about using ChatGPT for DevTestOps. And yeah, earlier there was, if you all use the previous version of ChatGPT, it would get stuck at a certain point. You would need to write continue. But now they've gotten that functionality. I mean, it's continuously advancing over time, so they've got new features in place. Now, later I asked this, if you could revamp these test cases and create more better results or something, or optimize the entire flow, it does that accordingly because it's able to understand the context. Test execution and result analysis. What I've done is I've said, assume I'm testing a banking application, mobile banking application, and I need to transfer money from accounts, create certain use cases and test cases around it. So it comes up with all that list. So I think I'll cover towards the end quickly what is the benefits out of it. Last thing is defect prediction and prevention. I've passed a code to it. Again, I would say don't pass your critical code. Try to optimize and encrypt whatever sensitive information is there. But it can always try to identify what are the defects within that particular bug, and also optimize your code and suggest accordingly. So this is third use case. Certain best practices, and this is very critical. Whoever is trying to implement ML or ChatGPT within their applications, this is something that I would recommend. Start small, focus on 1 or 2 use cases initially to determine the value that it provides. Ensure that data used for training and testing the AI models is of high quality. That's why you had a booth out there. I'm not sure if you all have checked, AI in short. They focus more on security, reliability, and various other aspects. Use a test automation framework to incorporate the ChatGPT and AI in your testing process. Develop a strong feedback loop and monitor the performance and effectiveness to ensure that it is delivering the expected results. Industry-wide AI tools that are used, GPT-4 we know is out. There's Google Bot, there's Code GPT extension which is used with Visual Code. There's TensorFlow for quite some time. GitHub Copilot, I would recommend all of you all to try it out. Amazon Comprehend. There's DALL-E and there's Midjourney. I hope folks, you all would have tried that for visual AI generation. Bard. And there's Gemini that was announced in Google I/O in May, which is going to be the competitor to GPT-4. So just read about these names and feel free to explore. Yeah, one important quote by our famous Steve Jobs: technology is nothing. What's important is that you have a faith in people, that they're basically good and smart, and if you give them tools, they'll do wonderful things with it, right? So what's next? Almost wrapping up. We have serverless computing, we have low code, no code, we have ML DevOps, you have chaos engineering, you have observability, and you have GitOps. Anyone wants to know further, we can always discuss post this session. Certain key takeaways. So the final thing, most important to remember, DevTestOps is a great way to improve release cycles and streamline the product deliveries. The 5 principal guidelines that we saw in the manifesto, the main goal of DevTestOps is not to silo test from Dev and Ops. Rather, it is to increase the visibility of testers and testing as integral parts of the DevOps quality culture. Embrace changes and use them to drive innovation. That is the key to a successful DevTestOps strategy. And the future of DevTestOps, along with ChatGPT, Bard, and AI is promising. As you heard from Vipul as well, AI is developing, it's getting smarter by the day. So there are advancements and trends that are going on, keep an eye. These are some of the 120 blowing AI tools that you can always try out in different areas: productivity, video marketing, chatbots, design, writing. And these are certain areas that I would say, about 12 areas where you can make use of ChatGPT, Bard, and AI in terms of testing and automation. So focus on these. And yeah, just before I go on to this slide, so I'm sure most of you all have just one question: will AI replace you all, right? And the answer to that is this. I'm sure you all can relate. So this is somewhere where we were, people that are using or making use of ChatGPT to assist them in use cases, and ChatGPT in itself. So if you don't shift towards the actual branch, I think it's time to fall off. So that's how I wanted to end my session. Yeah, that's all for today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Siddhant, for a lovely session. I hope that it was very much insightful for all of you here. We would like to call Mr. Anil to just present a memento from Step In.